His father was present before him, and he worshipped both his father and Vyasadeva with great respect and pomp. Being fully satisfied, he most munificently gave charity to the Brahmanas present at the sacrifice. Text 3. Maharaja Parikshit, after having selected Kirpacharya for guidance as his spiritual master, performed 3 horse sacrifices on the banks of the Ganges. These were executed with sufficient rewards for the attendants, and at these sacrifices even the common man could see demigods. Purport. It appears from this verse that interplanetary travel by the denizens of higher planets is easy. In many statements in Bhagavatam, we have observed that the demigods from heaven used to visit this earth to attend sacrifices performed by influential kings and emperors. Herein also we find that during the time of the horse sacrifice ceremony of Maharaja Parikshit, the demigods from other planets were visible even to the common man, due to the sacrificial ceremony. The demigods are not generally visible to common men, as the Lord is not visible, but as the Lord, by his causeless mercy, descends to be visible to the common man, similarly the demigods also become visible to the common man by their own grace. Although celestial beings are not visible to the naked eyes of the inhabitants of this earth, it was due to the influence of Maharaja Parikshit that the demigods also agreed to be visible. The kings used to spend lavishly during such sacrifices, as a cloud distributes rains. A cloud is nothing but another form of water, or, in other words, the waters of the earth transform into clouds. Similarly, the charity made by the kings in such sacrifices are but another form of the taxes collected from the citizens. But as the rains fall down very lavishly and appear to be more than necessary, the charity made by such kings also seems to be more than what the citizen needs. Satisfied citizens will never organize agitation against the king, and thus there was no need in changing the monarchical state. Even for a king like Maharaja Parikshit, there was need of a spiritual master for guidance. Without such guidance, one cannot make progress in spiritual life. The spiritual master must be bona fide, and one who wants to have self-realization must approach and take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master to achieve real success. Text 4. Once, when Maharaja Parikshit was on his way to conquer the world, he saw the master of Kali Yuga, who was lower than a Sudra, disguised as a king, and hurting the legs of a cow and bull. The king at once caught hold of him to deal sufficient punishment. Purport. The purpose of a king's going out to conquer the world is not for self-aggrandizement. Maharaja Parikshit went out to conquer the world after his ascendance to the throne, but this was not for the purpose of aggression on other states. He was the emperor of the world, and all small states were already under his regime. His purpose in going out was to see how things were going on in terms of the godly state. The king, being the representative of the Lord, has to execute the will of the Lord duly. There is no question of self-aggrandizement. Thus, as soon as Maharaja Parikshit saw that a lower-class man in the dress of a king was hurting the legs of a cow and a bull, at once he arrested and punished him. The king cannot tolerate insults to the most important animal, the cow, nor can he tolerate disrespect for the most important man, the Brahmana. Human civilization means to advance the cause of Brahminical culture and to maintain it. Cow protection is essential. There is a miracle in milk, for it contains all the necessary vitamins to sustain human physiological conditions for higher achievements. Brahminical culture can advance only when man is educated to develop the quality of goodness, and for this there is a prime necessity of food prepared with milk, fruits, and grains. Maharaja Parikshit was astonished to see that a black Sudra, dressed like a ruler, was mistreating a cow, the most important animal in human society. The age of Kali means mismanagement and quarrel, and the root cause of all mismanagement and quarrel is that worthless men with the modes of lower-class men, who have no higher ambition in life, come to the helm of the state management. Such men at the post of a king are sure to first hurt the cow and the Brahminical culture, thereby pushing all society towards hell. Maharaja Parikshit, trained as he was, got the scent of this root cause of all quarrel in the world. Thus he wanted to stop it in the very beginning. Text 5. Shanaka Rishi inquired, why did Maharaja Parikshit simply punish him, since he was the lowest of the Sudras, having dressed as a king and having struck a cow on the leg? Please describe all these incidents if they relate to the topics of Lord Krishna. Purport. Shanaka and the rishis were astonished to hear that the pious Maharaja Parikshit simply punished the culprit and did not kill him. This suggests that a pious king like Maharaja Parikshit should have at once killed an offender who wanted to cheat the public by dressing like a king and at the same time daring to insult the purest of the animals, a cow. The rishis in those days, however, could not even imagine that in the advanced days of the age of Kali, the lowest of the Sudras will be elected as administrators and will open organized slaughterhouses for killing cows. Anyway, although hearing about a Sudraka who was a cheat and insulter of a cow was not very interesting to the great rishis, they nevertheless wanted to hear about it to see if the event had any connection with Lord Krishna. They were simply interested in the topics of Lord Krishna, for anything that is dovetailed with the narration of Krishna is worth hearing. There are many topics in the Bhagavatam about sociology, politics, economics, cultural affairs, etc., but all of them are in relation with Krishna, and therefore all of them are worth hearing. Krishna is the purifying ingredient in all matters, regardless of what they are. In the mundane world, everything is impure due to its being a product of the three mundane qualities. The purifying agent, however, is Krishna. Text 6. The devotees of the Lord are accustomed to licking up the honey available from the lotus feet of the Lord. What is the use of topics which simply waste one's valuable life? Purport. Lord Krishna and his devotees are both on the transcendental plane. Therefore the topics of Lord Krishna and of his pure devotees are equally good. The battle of Kurukshetra is full of politics and diplomacy, but because the topics are related with Lord Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita is therefore adored all over the world. There is no need to eradicate politics, economics, sociology, etc., which are mundane to the mundaners. To a pure devotee who is actually related with the Lord, such mundane things are transcendental if dovetailed with the Lord or with his pure devotees. We have heard and talked about the activities of the Pandavas, and we now are dealing with the topics of Maharaja Parikshit. But because all these topics are related to the Lord Sri Krishna, they are all transcendental, and pure devotees have great interest in hearing them. We have already discussed this matter in connection with the prayers of Bhismadeva. Our duration of life is not very long, and there is no certainty of when we shall be ordered to leave everything for the next stage. Thus it is our duty to see that not a moment of our life is wasted in topics which are not related with Lord Krishna. Any topic, however pleasant, is not worth hearing if it is devoid of its relation to Krishna. The spiritual planet Goloka Vrindavana, the eternal abode of Lord Krishna, is shaped like the whorl of a lotus flower. Even when the Lord descends to any one of the mundane planets, he does so by manifesting his own abode as it is. Thus his feet remain always on the same big whorl of the lotus flower. His feet are also as beautiful as the lotus flower. Therefore it is said that Lord Krishna has lotus feet. A living being is eternal by constitution. He is, so to speak, in the whirlpool of birth and death due to his contact with material energy. Freed from such material energy, a living entity is liberated and is eligible to return home, back to Godhead. Those who want to live forever without changing their material bodies should not waste valuable time with topics other than those relating to Lord Krishna and his devotees. Text 7. O Sutta Goswami, there are those amongst men who desire freedom from death and get eternal life. They escape the slaughtering process by calling the controller of death Yamaraja. Purport. The living entity, as he develops from lower animal life to a higher human being, and gradually to higher intelligence, becomes anxious to get free from the clutches of death. Modern scientists try to avoid death by physiochemical advancement of knowledge, but alas, the controller of death, Yamaraja, is so cruel that he does not spare even the very life of the scientist himself. The scientist who puts forward the theory of stopping death by advancement of scientific knowledge becomes himself a victim of death when he is called by Yamaraja. What to speak of stopping death, no one can enhance the short period of life, even by a fraction of a moment. The only hope of suspending the cruel slaughtering process of Yamaraja is to call him to hear and chant the holy name of the Lord. Yamaraja is a great devotee of the Lord, and he likes to be invited to kirtanas and sacrifices by the pure devotees, who are constantly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Thus the great sages, headed by Sanaka and others, invited Yamaraja to attend the sacrifice performed at Naimisaranya. This was good for those who did not want to die. Text 8. As long as Yamaraja, who causes everyone's death, is present here, no one shall meet with death. The great sages have invited the controller of death, Yamaraja, who is the representative of the Lord. Living beings who are under his grip should take advantage by hearing the deathless nectar in the form of this narration of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Purport. Every human being dislikes meeting death, but he does not know how to get rid of death. The surest remedy for avoiding death is to accustom oneself to hearing the nectarian pastimes of the Lord as they are systematically narrated in the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is advised herein, therefore, that any human being who desires freedom from death should take to this course of life as recommended by the rishis headed by Sanaka. Text 9. Lazy human beings with paltry intelligence and a short duration of life pass the night sleeping and the day performing activities that are for naught. Purport. The less intelligent do not know the real value of the human form of life. The human form is a special gift of material nature in the course of her enforcing stringent laws of miseries upon the living being. It is a chance to achieve the highest boon of life, namely to get out of the entanglement of repeated birth and death. The intelligent take care of this important gift by strenuously endeavoring to get out of the entanglement. But the less intelligent are lazy and unable to evaluate the gift of the human body to achieve liberation from the material bondage. They become more interested in so-called economic development and work very hard throughout life, simply for the sense enjoyment of the temporary body. Sense enjoyment is also allowed to the lower animals by the law of nature, and thus a human being is also destined to a certain amount of sense enjoyment according to his past or present life. But one should definitely try to understand that sense enjoyment is not the ultimate goal of human life. Herein it is said that during the daytime one works for nothing because the aim is nothing but sense enjoyment. We can particularly observe how the human being is engaged for nothing in the great cities and industrial towns. There are so many things manufactured by human energy, but they are all meant for sense enjoyment and not for getting out of material bondage. And after working hard during the daytime, a tired man either sleeps or engages in sex habits at night. That is the program of materialistic civilized life for the less intelligent. Therefore they are designated herein as lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived. Text 10. Sutta Goswami said, while Maharaja Parikshit was residing in the capital of the Kuru Empire, the symptoms of the age of Kali began to infiltrate within the jurisdiction of his state. When he learned about this, he did not think the matter very palatable. This did, however, give him a chance to fight. He took up his bow and arrows and prepared himself for military activities. Purport. The state administration of Maharaja Parikshit was so perfect that he was sitting in his capital peacefully, but he got the news that the symptoms of the age of Kali had already infiltrated into the jurisdiction of his state, and he did not like this news. What are the symptoms of the age of Kali? They are 1. Illicit connection with women, 2. Indulgence in meat eating, 3. Intoxication, and 4. Taking pleasure in gambling. The age of Kali literally means the age of quarrel, and the above-mentioned 4 symptoms in human society are the root causes for all kinds of quarrel. Maharaja Parikshit heard that some of the people of the state had already taken to those symptoms, and he wanted to take immediate steps against such causes of unrest. This means that at least up to the regime of Maharaja Parikshit, such symptoms of public life were practically unknown, and as soon as they were slightly detected, he wanted to root them out. The news was not palatable to him, but in a way it was because Maharaja Parikshit got a chance to fight. There was no need to fight with small states because everyone was peacefully under his subordination, but the Kali Yuga miscreants gave his fighting spirit a chance for exhibition. A perfect Kshatriya king is always jubilant as soon as he gets a chance to fight, just as a sportsman is eager when there is a chance for a sporting match. It is no argument that in the age of Kali such symptoms are predestined. If so, then why was there preparation for fighting out such symptoms? Such arguments are offered by lazy and unfortunate men. In the rainy season, rain is predestined, and yet people take precautions to protect themselves. Similarly, in the age of Kali, the symptoms as above mentioned are sure to infiltrate into social life, but it is the duty of the state to save the citizens from the association of the agents of the age of Kali. Maharaja Parikshit wanted to punish the miscreants indulging in the symptoms of Kali, and thus save the innocent citizens who were pure in habit by culture of religion. It is the duty of the king to give such protection, and Maharaja Parikshit was perfectly right when he prepared himself to fight. Text 11. Maharaja Parikshit sat on a chariot drawn by black horses. His flag was marked with the sign of a lion. Being so decorated and surrounded by charioteers, cavalry, elephants, and infantry soldiers, he left the capital to conquer in all directions. Purport. Maharaja Parikshit is distinguished from his grandfather Arjuna, for black horses pulled his chariot instead of white horses. He marked his flag with the mark of a lion, and his grandfather marked his with the mark of Hanumanji. A royal procession like that of Maharaja Parikshit, surrounded by well-decorated chariots, cavalry, elephants, infantry, and band, not only is pleasing to the eyes, but also is a sign of civilization that is aesthetic even on the fighting front. Text 12. Maharaja Parikshit then conquered all parts of the earthly planet. Bhadrashva, Ketamala, Bharata, the northern Kuru, Kimpurusha, etc., and exalted tributes from their respective rulers. Purport. Bhadrashva. It is a tract of land near Meru Parvata, and it extends from Gandhamadana Parvata to the saltwater ocean. There is a description of this Varsha in the Mahabharata, Bhisma Parva 7:14-18. The description was narrated by Sanjaya to Dhritarashtra. Maharaja Yudhishthira also conquered this Varsha, and thus the province was included within the jurisdiction of his empire. Maharaja Parikshit was formally declared to be the emperor of all lands ruled by his grandfather, but still he had to establish his supremacy while he was out of his capital to exact tribute from such states. Ketumala. This earth planet is divided into 7 dvipas by 7 oceans, and the central dvipa, called Jambudvipa, is divided into 9 varshas, or parts, by 8 huge mountains. Bharatavarsha is one of the above-mentioned 9 varshas, and Ketumala is also described as one of the above varshas. It is said that in Ketumala Varsha, women are the most beautiful. This varsha was conquered by Arjuna also. A description of this part of the world is available in the Mahabharata, Sabha 28:6. It is said that this part of the world is situated on the western side of the Meru Parvata, and inhabitants of this province used to live up to 10,000 years. Bhisma Parva 6:31. Human beings living in this part of the globe are of golden color, and the women resemble the angels of heaven. The inhabitants are free from all kinds of diseases and grief. Bharatavarsha, this part of the world, is also one of the 9 varshas of the Jambudvipa. A description of Bharatavarsha is given in the Mahabharata, Bhisma Parva, chapters 9 and 10. In the center of Jambudvipa is Ilavrita and south of Ilavrita is Harivarsha. The description of these varshas is given in the Mahabharata, Sabhaparva 28:7-8, as follows. Nagarams cha vanams chaiva nadish cha vimalodak purushan devakalpams cha naris cha priya darshana ardistra purvan suvagan sadadarsha Dhananjaya Sadanani Cha Subrani Naris Chapsarsham Nibha. It is mentioned here that the women in both these varshas are beautiful, and some of them are equal to the Apsaras, or heavenly women. Uttarakuru. According to Vedic geography, the northernmost position of Jambudvipa is called Uttarakuru Varsha. It is surrounded by the saltwater ocean from 3 sides, and divided by Sringavan mountain from the Hiranmaya Varsha. Kimpurusha Varsha It is stated to be situated north of the great Himalaya mountain, which is 80,000 miles in length and height, and which covers 16,000 miles in width. These parts of the world were also conquered by Arjuna, Sabha 28 1-2. The Kimpurushas are descendants of a daughter of Daksha. When Maharaja Yudhishthira performed a horse sacrifice, yajna, the inhabitants of these countries were also present to take part in the festival, and they paid tributes to the emperor. This part of the world is called Kimpurusha Varsha, or sometimes the Himalayan provinces, Himavati. It is said that Sukadeva Goswami was born in these Himalayan provinces, and that he came to Bharatavarsha after crossing the Himalayan countries. In other words, Maharaja Parikshit conquered all the world. He conquered all the continents adjoining all the seas and oceans in all directions, namely the eastern, western, northern, and southern parts of the world. Text 13-15. Wherever the king visited, he continuously heard the glories of his great forefathers, who were all devotees of the Lord, and also of the glorious acts of Lord Krishna. He also heard how he himself had been protected by the Lord from the powerful heat of the weapon of Ashvatthama. People also mentioned the great affection between the descendants of Vrishni and Partha, due to the latter's great devotion to Lord Kesava. The king, being very pleased with the singers of such glories, opened his eyes in great satisfaction. Out of magnanimity, he is pleased to award them very valuable necklaces and clothing. Purport. Kings and great personalities of the state are presented with welcome addresses. This is a system from time immemorial, and Maharaja Parikshit, since he was one of the well-known emperors of the world, was also presented with addresses of welcome in all parts of the world as he visited those places. The subject matter of those welcome addresses was Krishna. Krishna means Krishna and his eternal devotees, as the king means the king and his confidential associates. Krishna and his unalloyed devotees cannot be separated, and therefore glorifying the devotee means glorifying the Lord, and vice versa. Maharaja Parikshit would not have been glad to hear about the glories of his forefathers like Maharaja Yudhishthira and Arjuna had they not been connected with the acts of Lord Krishna. The Lord descends specifically to deliver his devotees, paritranaya sadhanam. The devotees are glorified by the presence of the Lord because they cannot live for a moment without the presence of the Lord and his different energies. The Lord is present for the devotee by his acts and glories, and therefore Maharaja Parikshit felt the presence of the Lord when he was glorified by his acts, especially when he was saved by the Lord in the womb of his mother. The devotees of the Lord are never in danger, but in the material world, which is full of dangers at every step, the devotees are apparently placed into dangerous positions, and when they are saved by the Lord is glorified. Lord Krishna would not have been glorified as the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita had his devotees like the Pandavas not been entangled in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. All such acts of the Lord were mentioned in the addresses of welcome, and Maharaja Parikshit, in full satisfaction, rewarded those who presented such addresses. The difference between the presentation of welcome addresses today and in those days is that formerly the welcome addresses were presented to a person like Maharaja Parikshit. The welcome addresses were full of facts and figures, and those who presented such addresses were sufficiently rewarded, whereas in the present days the welcome addresses are presented not always with factual statements, but to please the post holder, and often they are full of flattering lies. And rarely are those who present such welcome addresses rewarded by the poor receiver. Text 16. Maharaja Parikshit heard that out of his causeless mercy, Lord Krishna, Vishnu, who is universally obeyed, rendered all kinds of service to the malleable sons of Pandu by accepting posts ranging from chariot driver to president to messenger, friend, night watchman, etc., according to the will of the Pandavas, obeying them like a servant and offering obeisances like one younger in years. When he heard this, Maharaja Parikshit became overwhelmed with devotion to the lotus feet of the Lord. Purport. Lord Krishna is everything to the unalloyed devotees like the Pandavas. The Lord was for them the Supreme Lord, the spiritual master, the worshipable deity, the guide, the chariot driver, the friend, the servant, the messenger, and everything they could conceive of. And thus the Lord also reciprocated the feelings of the Pandavas. Maharaja Parikshit, as a pure devotee of the Lord, could appreciate the Lord's transcendental reciprocation of the feelings of his devotees, and thus he himself also was overwhelmed with the dealings of the Lord. Simply by appreciating the dealings of the Lord with his pure devotees, one can attain salvation. The Lord's dealings with his devotees appear to be ordinary human dealings, but one who knows them in truth becomes at once eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. The Pandavas were so malleable to the will of the Lord that they could sacrifice any amount of energy for the service of the Lord, and by such unalloyed determination they could secure the Lord's mercy in any shape they desired. Text 17. Now you may hear from me of what happened while Maharaja Parikshit was passing his days, hearing of the good occupations of his forefathers, and being absorbed in thought of them. Text 18. The personality of religious principles, Dharma, was wandering about in the form of a bull, and he met the personality of earth in the form of a cow, who appeared to grieve like a mother who had lost her child. She had tears in her eyes, and the beauty of her body was lost. Thus Dharma questioned the earth as follows. Purport. The bull is the emblem of the moral principle, and the cow is the representative of the earth. When the bull and the cow are in a joyful mood, it is to be understood that the people of the world are also in a joyful mood. The reason is that the bull helps production of grains in the agricultural field, and the cow delivers milk. The miracle of aggregate food values. The human society, therefore, maintains these two important animals very carefully, so that they can wander everywhere in cheerfulness. But at the present moment, in this age of Kali, both the bull and the cow are now being slaughtered and eaten up as foodstuff by a class of men who do not know the Brahminical culture. The bull and the cow can be protected for the good of all human society simply by the spreading of Brahminical culture as the topmost perfection of all cultural affairs. By advancement of such culture, the morale of society is properly maintained, and so peace and prosperity are also attained without extraneous effort. When Brahminical culture deteriorates, the cow and bull are mistreated, and the resultant actions are prominent by the following symptoms. Text 19. Dharma, in the form of a bull, asked, Madame, are you not hale and hearty? Why are you covered with the shadow of grief? It appears by your face that you have become black. Are you suffering from some internal disease, or are you thinking of some relative who is away in a distant place? Purport. The people of the world in this age of Kali are always full of anxieties. Everyone is diseased with some kind of ailment. From the very faces of the people of this age, one can find out the index of the mind. Everyone feels the absence of his relative who is away from home. The particular symptom of the age of Kali is that no family is now blessed to live together. To earn a livelihood, the father lives at a place far away from the son, or the wife lives far away from the husband, and so on. There are sufferings from internal diseases, separation from those near and dear, and anxieties for maintaining the status quo. These are but some important factors which make the people of this age always unhappy. Text 20. I have lost my 3 legs and am now standing on one only. Are you lamenting for my state of existence, or are you in great anxiety because henceforward the unlawful meat-eaters will exploit you? Or are you in a sorry plight because the demigods are now bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings, because no sacrifices are being performed at present? Or are you grieving for living beings because of their sufferings due to famine and drought? Purport. With the progress of the age of Kali, 4 things particularly, namely the duration of life, mercy, the power of recollection, and moral or religious principles will gradually diminish. Since Dharma, or the principles of religion, would be lost in the proportion of 3 out of 4, the symbolic bull was standing on one leg only. When 3/4 of the population of the whole world become irreligious, the situation is converted into hell for the animals. In the age of Kali, godless civilizations will create so many so-called religious societies in which the personality of Godhead will be directly or indirectly defied, and thus faithless societies of men will make the world world uninhabitable for the sane or section of people. There are gradations of human beings in terms of proportionate faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The first-class faithful men are the Vaishnavas and the Brahmanas, then the Kshatriyas, then the Vaishyas, then the Sudras, then the Mlechas, the Yavanas, and, at last, the Chandalas. The degradation of the human instinct begins from the Mlechas, and the Chandala state of life is the last word in human degradation. All the above terms mentioned in the Vedic literatures are never meant for any particular community or birth. They are different qualifications of human beings in general. There is no question of birthright or community. One can acquire the respective qualifications by one's own efforts, and thus the son of a Vaishnava can become a Mlecha, or the son of a Chandala can become more than a Brahmana, all in terms of their association and intimate relation with the Supreme Lord. The meat-eaters are generally called mlechas, but all meat-eaters are not mlechas. Those who accept meat in terms of scriptural injunctions are not mlechas, but those who accept meat without restriction are called mlechas. Beef is forbidden in the scriptures, and the bulls and cows are offered special protection by followers of the Vedas. But in this age of Kali, people will exploit the body of the bull and the cow as they like, and thus they will invite sufferings of various types. The people of this age will not perform any sacrifice. The Mlecha population will care very little for performances of sacrifices, although performance of sacrifice is essential for persons who are materially engaged in sense enjoyment. In the Bhagavad Gita, performance of sacrifices is strongly recommended. Bhagavad Gita 3:14-16. The living beings are created by the Creator Brahma, and just to maintain the created living being progressively towards the path back to Godhead, the system of performing sacrifice is also created by him. The system is that living beings live on the produce of grains and vegetables, and by eating such foodstuffs they get vital power of the body in the shape of blood and semen, and from blood and semen one living being is able to create other living beings. But the production of grains, grass, etc. becomes possible by rain, and this rain is made to shower properly by performance of recommended sacrifices. Such sacrifices are directed by the rites of the Vedas, namely Sama, Yajur, Rig, and Atharva. In the Manusmriti, it is recommended that by offerings of sacrifice on the altar of the fire, the sun god is pleased. When the sun god is pleased, he properly collects water from the sea, and thus sufficient clouds collect on the horizon, and rains fall. After sufficient rains fall, there is sufficient production of grains for men and all animals, and thus there is energy in the living being for progressive activity. The Mlechas, however, make plans to install slaughterhouses for killing bulls and cows, along with other animals, thinking that they will prosper by increasing the number of factories and live on animal food without caring for performance of sacrifices and production of grains. But they must know that even for the animals they must produce grass and vegetables, otherwise the animals cannot live, and to produce grass for the animals they require sufficient rains. Therefore, they have to depend ultimately on the mercy of the demigods, like the sun god Indra and Chandra, and such demigods must be satisfied by performance of sacrifice. This material world is a sort of prison house, as we have several times mentioned. The demigods are the servants of the Lord, who see to the proper upkeep of the prison house. These demigods want to see that the rebel living beings, who want to survive faithlessly, are gradually turned towards the supreme power of the Lord. Therefore, the system of offering sacrifice is recommended in the scriptures. The materialistic men want to work hard and enjoy fruitive results for sense enjoyment. Thus they are committing many types of sins at every step of life. Those, however, who are consciously engaged in the devotional service of the Lord are transcendental to all varieties of sin and virtue. Their activities are free from the contamination of the three modes of material nature. For the devotees there is no need for performance of prescribed sacrifices, because the very life of the devotee is a symbol of sacrifice. But persons who are engaged in fruitive activities for sense enjoyment enjoyment, must perform the prescribed sacrifices, because that is the only means to get free from the reaction of all sins committed by fruitive workers. Sacrifice is the means for counteracting such accumulated sins. The demigods are pleased when such sacrifices are performed, just as prison officers are satisfied when the prisoners are turned into obedient subjects. Lord Chaitanya, however, has recommended only one yajna, or sacrifice, called the Sankirtana yajna, the chanting of Hare Krishna, in which everyone can take part. Thus both devotees and fruitive workers can derive equal benefit from the performances of Sankirtana yajna. Text 21. Are you feeling compunction for the unhappy women and children who are left forlorn by unscrupulous persons? Or are you unhappy because the goddess of learning is being handled by Brahmanas addicted to acts against the principles of religion? Or are you sorry to see that the Brahmanas have taken shelter of administrative families that do not respect Brahminical culture? Purport. In the age of Kali, the women and the children, along with Brahmanas and cows, will be grossly neglected and left unprotected. In this age, illicit connection with women will render many women and children uncared for. Circumstantially, the women will try to become independent of the protection of men, and marriage will be performed as a matter of formal agreement between man and woman. In most cases, the children will not be taken care of properly. The Brahmanas are traditionally intelligent men, and thus they will be able to pick up modern education to the topmost rank. But as far as moral and religious principles are concerned, they shall be the most fallen. Education and bad character go ill together, but such things will run parallel. The administrative heads as a class will condemn the tenets of Vedic wisdom and will prefer to conduct a so-called secular state, and the so-called educated Brahmanas will be purchased by such unscrupulous administrators. Even a philosopher and writer of many books on religious principles may also accept an exalted post in a government which denies all the moral codes of the Shastras. The Brahmanas are specifically restricted from accepting such service. But in this age they will not only accept service, but they will do so even if it is of the meanest quality. These are some of the symptoms of the Kali age which are harmful to the general welfare of human society. Text 22. The so-called administrators are now bewildered by the influence of this age of Kali, and thus they have put all state affairs into disorder. Are you now lamenting this disorder? Now the general populace does not follow the rules and regulations for eating, sleeping, drinking, mating, etc., and they are inclined to perform such anywhere and everywhere. Are you unhappy because of this? Purport. There are some necessities of life on a par with those of the lower animals, and they are eating, sleeping, fearing, and mating. These bodily demands are for both the human beings and the animals, but the human being has to fulfill such desires not like animals, but like a human being. A dog can mate with a bitch before the public eyes without hesitation, but if a human being does so, the act will be considered a public nuisance, and the person will be criminally prosecuted. Therefore, for the human being, there are some rules and regulations, even for fulfilling common demands. The human society avoids such rules and regulations when it is bewildered by the influence of the age of Kali. In this age, people are indulging in such necessities of life without following the rules and regulations, and this deterioration of social and moral rules is certainly lamentable because of the harmful effects of such beastly behavior. In this age, the fathers and the guardians are not happy with the behavior of their wards. They should know that so many innocent children are victims of bad association, awarded by the influence of this age of Kali. We know from Srimad Bhagavatam that Ajamila, an innocent son of a Brahmana, was walking down a road and saw a Sudra pair sexually embracing. This attracted the boy, and later on the boy became a victim of all debaucheries. From a pure Brahmana, he fell down to the position of a wretched urchin, and it was all due to bad association. There was but one victim like Ajamila in those days, but in this age of Kali, the poor innocent students are daily victims of cinemas which attract men only for sex indulgence. The so-called administrators are all untrained in the affairs of a Kshatriya. The Kshatriyas are meant for administration, as the Brahmanas are meant for knowledge and guidance. The word Kshatrabandhu refers to the so-called administrators or persons promoted to the post of the administrator without proper training by culture and tradition. Nowadays they are promoted to such exalted posts by the votes of the people who are themselves fallen in the rules and regulations of life. How can such people select a proper man when they are themselves fallen in the standard of life? Therefore, by the influence of the age of Kali, everywhere, politically, socially, or religiously, everything is topsy-turvy, and therefore for the sane man it is all regrettable. Text 23. Him who is now out of sight, O Mother Earth, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, incarnated himself as Lord Sri Krishna just to unload your heavy burden. All his activities here are transcendental, and they cement the path of liberation. You are now bereft of his presence. You are probably now thinking of those activities and feeling sorry in their absence. Purport. The activities of the Lord include liberation, but they are more relishable than the pleasure derived from nirvana or liberation. According to Srila Jiva Goswami and Vishwanatha Chakravarti Thakura, the word used here is nirvana valambitani, that which minimizes the value of liberation. To attain nirvana liberation, one has to undergo a severe type of tapasya, austerity, but the Lord is so merciful that he incarnates to diminish the burden of the earth. Simply by remembering such activities, one can defy the pleasure derived from nirvana and reach the transcendental abode of the Lord to associate with him, eternally engaged in his blissful loving service. Text 24. Mother, you are the reservoir of all riches. Please inform me of the root cause of your tribulations, by which you have been reduced to such a weak state. I think that the powerful influence of time, which conquers the most powerful, might have forcibly taken away all your fortune, which was adored even by the demigods. Purport. By the grace of the Lord, each and every planet is created fully equipped. So not only is this earth fully equipped with all the riches for the maintenance of its inhabitants, but also when the Lord descends on the earth, the whole earth becomes so enriched with all kinds of opulences that even the denizens of heaven worship it with all affection. But by the will of the Lord, the whole earth can at once be changed. He can do and undo a thing by his sweet will. Therefore no one should consider himself to be self-sufficient or independent of the Lord. Text 25. The earthly deity in the form of a cow thus replied to the personality of religious principles in the form of a bull. O Dharma, whatever you have inquired from me shall be known to you. I shall try to reply to all those questions. Once you too were maintained by your 4 legs, and you increased happiness all over the universe by the mercy of the Lord. Purport. The principles of religion are laid down by the Lord himself, and the executor of such laws is Dharmaraja or Yamaraja. Such principles work fully in the age of Satya Yuga. In the Treta Yuga they are reduced by a fraction of 1/4. In the Dvapara Yuga they are reduced to 1/2, and in the Kali Yuga they are reduced to 1/4, gradually diminishing to the 0 point, and then devastation takes place. Happiness in the world depends proportionately on the maintenance of the religious principles, individually or collectively. The best part of valor is to maintain the principles despite all kinds of odds. Thus one can be happy during the span of life and ultimately return to Godhead. Text 26 through 30. In him reside 1. Truthfulness, 2. Cleanliness, 3. Intolerance of another's unhappiness, 4. The power to control anger, 5. Self-satisfaction, 6. Straightforwardness, 7. Steadiness of mind, 8. Control of the sense organs, 9. Responsibility, 10. Equality, 11. Tolerance, 12. Equanimity, 13. Faithfulness, 14. Knowledge, 15. Absence of sense enjoyment, 16. Leadership, 17. Chivalry. 18. Influence. 19. The power to make everything possible. 20. The discharge of proper duty. 21. Complete independence. 22. Dexterity. 23. Fullness of all beauty. 24. Serenity. 25. Kind-heartedness. 26. Ingenuity. 27. Gentility. 28. Magnanimity. 29. Determination. 30. Perfection in all knowledge. 31. Proper execution. 32. Possession of all objects of enjoyment. 33. Joyfulness. 34. Immovability. 35. Fidelity. 36. Fame. 37. Worship. 38. Pridelessness. 39. Being, as the personality of Godhead. 40. Eternity, and many other transcendental qualities which are eternally present and never to be separated from him. That personality of Godhead, the reservoir of all goodness and beauty, Lord Sri Krishna, has now closed his transcendental pastimes on the face of the earth. In his absence, the age of Kali has spread its influence everywhere, so I am sorry to see this condition of existence. Purport. Even if it were possible to count the atoms after smashing the earth into powder, still it would not be possible to estimate the unfathomable transcendental qualities of the Lord. It is said that Lord Anantadeva was tried to expound the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Lord with his numberless tongues, and that for numberless years together it has been impossible to estimate the qualities of the Lord. The above statement of the qualities of the Lord is just to estimate his qualities as far as a human being is able to see him. But even if it is so, the above qualities can be divided into many subheadings. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the third quality, intolerance of another's unhappiness, can be subdivided into 1. Protection of the surrendered souls, and 2. Well wishes for the devotees. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord states that he wants every soul to surrender unto him only, and he assures everyone that if one does so, he will give protection from the reactions of all sins. Unsurrendered souls are not devotees of the Lord, and thus there is no particular protection for everyone in general. For the devotees, he has all good wishes, and for those who are actually engaged in loving transcendental service of the Lord, he gives particular attention. He gives direction to such pure devotees to help them discharge their responsibilities on the path back to Godhead. By equality, 10. The Lord is equally kind to everyone, as the sun is equal in distributing its rays over everyone. Yet there are many who are unable to take refuge of the sun's rays. Similarly, the Lord says that surrendering unto him is the guarantee for all protection from him, but unfortunate persons are unable to accept this proposition, and therefore they suffer from all material miseries. So even though the Lord is equally well-wishing to everyone, the unfortunate living being, due to bad association only, is unable to accept his instructions in toto, and for this the Lord is never to be blamed. He is called the well-wisher for the devotees only. He appears to be partial to his devotees, but factually the Master rests on the living beings to accept or reject equal treatment by the Lord. The Lord never deviates from his word of honor. When he gives assurance for protection, the promise is executed in all circumstances. It is the duty of the pure devotee to be fixed in the discharge of the duty entrusted to him by the Lord, or the Lord's bona fide representative, the spiritual master. The rest is carried on by the Lord without a break. The responsibility of the Lord is also unique. The Lord has no responsibility because all his work is done by his different appointed energies, but still he accepts voluntary responsibilities in displaying different roles in his transcendental pastimes. As a boy, he was playing the part of a cowboy. As the son of Nanda Maharaja, he discharged responsibility perfectly. Similarly, when he was playing the part of a Kshatriya as the son of Maharaja Vasudeva, he displayed all the skill of a martially spirited Kshatriya. In almost all cases, the Kshatriya king has to secure a wife by fighting or kidnapping. This sort of behavior for a Kshatriya is praiseworthy in the sense that a Kshatriya must show his power of chivalry to his would-be wife, so that the daughter of a Kshatriya can see the valor of her would-be husband. Even the personality of Godhead, Sri Rama, displayed such a spirit of chivalry during his marriage. He broke the strongest bow, called Haradhanur, and achieved the hand of Sita Devi, the mother of all opulence. The Kshatriya spirit is displayed during marriage festivals, and there is nothing wrong in such fighting. Lord Sri Krishna discharged such responsibility fully, because although he had more than 16,000 wives, in each and every case he fought like a chivalrous Kshatriya, and thus secured a wife. To fight 16,000 times to secure 16,000 wives is certainly possible only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Similarly, he displayed full responsibility in every action of his different transcendental pastimes. The 14th quality, knowledge, can be further extended into 5 subheadings, namely 1. Intelligence, 2. Gratefulness, 3. Power of understanding the circumstantial environments of place, object, and time, 4. Perfect knowledge of everything, and 5. Knowledge of the self. Only fools are ungrateful to their benefactors. The Lord, however, does not require benefit from anyone besides himself, because he is full in himself. Still, he feels benefited by the unalloyed services of his devotees. The Lord feels grateful to his devotees for such unsophisticated, unconditional service, and tries to reciprocate it by rendering service, although the devotee also has no such desire in his heart. The transcendental service of the Lord is itself a transcendental benefit for the devotee, and therefore the devotee has nothing to expect from the Lord. On the assertion of the Vedic aphorism, Sharvam Kalv Idam Brahma, we can understand that the Lord, by the omnipresent rays of his effulgence, called Brahmajyoti, is all-pervading inside or outside of everything, like the omnipresent material sky, and thus he is also omniscient. As far as the beauty of the Lord is concerned, he has some special features that distinguish him from all other living beings, and over and above that, he has some special attractive, beautiful features by which he attracts the mind of even Radharani, the supermost beautiful creation of the Lord. He is known, therefore, as Madana Mohana, or one who attracts the mind of even Cupid. Srila Jiva Goswami Prabhu has scrutinizingly analyzed other transcendental qualities of the Lord and affirms that Lord Sri Krishna is the absolute supreme personality of Godhead, Parabrahman. He is omnipotent by his inconceivable energies, and therefore he is the Yogeshvara, or the supreme master of all mystic powers. Being the Yogeshvara, his eternal form is spiritual, a combination of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. The non-devotee class cannot understand the dynamic nature of his knowledge because they are satisfied to reach up to his eternal form of knowledge. All great souls aspire to be equal in knowledge with him. This means that all other knowledge is ever insufficient, flexible, and measurable, whereas the knowledge of the Lord is ever fixed and unfathomable. Srila Sutta Goswami affirms in the Bhagavatam that although he was observed by the citizens of Dwarka every day, they were ever increasingly anxious to see him again and again. The living beings can appreciate the qualities of the Lord as the ultimate goal, but they cannot attain the status quo of such equality. This material world is a product of the Mahatattva, which is a state of the Lord's dreaming condition in his Yoga Nidra mystic slumber in the causal ocean, and yet the whole creation appears to be a factual presentation of his creation. This means that the Lord's dreaming conditions are also factual manifestations. He can therefore bring everything under his transcendental control, and thus whenever and wherever he does appear, he does so in his fullness. The Lord, being all that is described above, maintains the affairs of the creation, and by his so doing he gives salvation even to his enemies who are killed by him. He is attractive even to the topmost liberated soul, and thus he is worshipable even by Brahma and Shiva, the greatest of all demigods. Even in his incarnation of Purusha Avatara, he is the Lord of the creative energy. The creative material energy is working under his direction, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 9:10. He is the control switch of the material energy, and to control the material energy in the innumerable universes, he is the root cause of innumerable incarnations in all the universes. There are more than 500,000 incarnations of Manu in only one universe, besides other incarnations in different universes. In the spiritual world, however, beyond the Mahatattva, there is no question of incarnations, but there are plenary expansions of the Lord in different Vaikunthas. The planets in the spiritual sky are at least 3 times the number of those within the innumerable universes in the Mahatattva, and all the Narayana forms of the Lord are but expansions of his Vasudeva feature, and thus he is Vasudeva, Narayana, and Krishna simultaneously. He is Sri Krishna Govinda Hare Murare, Henatha Narayana Vasudeva, all in one. His qualities, therefore, cannot be counted by anyone, however great one may be. Text 31. I am thinking about myself, and also, O best among the demigods, about you as well as about all the demigods, sages, denizens of Pitriloka, devotees of the Lord, and all men obedient to the system of Varna and Ashrama in human society. Purport. To effect the perfection of human life, there is cooperation between men and demigods, sages, denizens of the Pitriloka, devotees of the Lord, and the scientific system of Varna and Ashrama orders of life. The distinction between human life and animal life, therefore, begins with the scientific system of Varna and Ashrama, guided by the experience of the sages in relation with the demigods, gradually rising to the summit of re-establishing our eternal relation with the Supreme Absolute Truth, the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. When God made Varnashrama Dharma, which is strictly meant for developing animal consciousness into human consciousness and human consciousness into godly consciousness, is broken by advancement of foolishness, the whole system of peaceful and progressive life is at once disturbed. In the age of Kali, the first attack of the venomous snake strikes against the God-made Varnashrama Dharma, and thus a person properly qualified as a Brahmana is called a Sudra, and a Sudra by qualification is passing as a Brahmana, all on a false birthright claim. To become a Brahmana by a birthright claim is not at all bona fide, although it may be a fulfillment of one of the conditions, but the real qualification of a Brahmana is to control the mind and the senses, and to cultivate tolerance, simplicity, cleanliness, knowledge, truthfulness, devotion, and faith in the Vedic wisdom. In the present age, consideration of the necessary qualification is being neglected, and the false birthright claim is being supported even by a popular sophisticated poet, the author of Ramacharita-manasa. This is all due to the influence of the age of Kali. Thus Mother Earth, represented as a cow, was lamenting the regrettable condition. Text 32 through 33. Lakshmiji, the goddess of fortune, whose glance of grace was sought by demigods like Brahma, and for whom they surrendered many a day unto the personality of Godhead, gave up her own abode in the forest of lotus flowers, and engaged herself in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord. I was endowed with specific powers to supersede the fortune of all the 3 planetary systems by being decorated with the impressions of the flag, thunderbolt, elephant driving rod, and lotus flower, which are signs of the lotus feet of the Lord. But at the end, when I felt I was so fortunate, the Lord left me. Purport. The beauty and opulence of the world can be enhanced by the grace of the Lord, and not by any man-made planning. When the Lord Sri Krishna was present on this earth, the impressions of the special signs of his lotus feet were stamped on the dust, and as a result of this specific grace, the whole earth was made as perfect as possible. In other words, the rivers, the seas, the forests, the hills, and the mines, which are the supplying agents for the necessities of men and animals, were fully discharging their respective duties. Therefore, the riches of the world surpassed all the riches of all other planets in the 3 planetary systems of the universe. One should therefore ask that the grace of the Lord always be present on earth, so that we may be favored with his causeless mercy and be happy, having all necessities of life. One may ask how we can detain the Supreme Lord on this earth after his mission is fulfilled and he has left this earth for his own abode. The answer is that there is no need to detain the Lord. The Lord, being omnipresent, can be present with us if we want him at all. By his omnipotence, he can always be with us if we are attached to his devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, etc. There is nothing in the world with which the Lord is disconnected. The only thing we must learn is to excavate the source of connection and thus be linked with him by offenseless service. We can be connected with him by the transcendental sound representation of the Lord. The holy name of the Lord and the Lord himself are identical, and one who chants the holy name of the Lord in an offenseless manner can at once realize that the Lord is present before him. Even by the vibration of radio sound, we can partially realize sound relativity, and by resounding the sound of transcendence, we can verily feel the presence of the Lord. In this age, when everything is polluted by the contamination of Kali, it is instructed in the scriptures and preached by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that by chanting the holy name of the Lord, we can at once be free from contamination and gradually rise to the status of transcendence and go back to Godhead. The offenseless chanter of the holy name of the Lord is as auspicious as the Lord himself, and the movement of pure devotees of the Lord all over the world can at once change the troublesome face of the world. Only by the propagation of the chanting of the holy name of the Lord can we be immune from all effects of the age of Kali. Text 34. O personality of religion, I was greatly overburdened by the undue military phalanxes arranged by atheistic kings, and I was relieved by the grace of the personality of Godhead. Similarly, you were also in a distressed condition, weakened in your standing strength, and thus he also incarnated by his internal energy in the family of the Yadus to relieve you. Purport. The Ashuras want to enjoy a life of sense gratification, even at the cost of others' happiness. In order to fulfill this ambition, the Ashuras, especially atheistic kings or state executive heads, try to equip themselves with all kinds of deadly weapons to bring about a war in a peaceful society. They have no ambition other than personal aggrandizement, and thus Mother Earth feels overburdened by such undue increases of military strength. By increase of the Ashuric population, those who follow the principles of religion become unhappy, especially the devotees or devas. In such a situation, the personality of Godhead incarnates to vanquish the unwanted Ashuras and to re-establish the true principles of religion. This was the mission of Lord Sri Krishna, and he fulfilled it. Text 35. Who therefore can tolerate the pangs of separation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead? He could conquer the gravity and passionate wrath of his sweethearts like Satyabhama by his sweet smile of love, pleasing glance, and hearty appeals. When he traversed my earth's surface, I would be immersed in the dust of his lotus feet, and thus would be sumptuously covered with grass, which appeared like hairs standing on me out of pleasure. Purport. There were chances of separation between the Lord and his thousands of queens because of the Lord's being absent from home, but as far as his connection with earth was concerned, the Lord would traverse the earth with his lotus feet, and therefore there was no chance of separation. When the Lord left the surface of the earth to return to his spiritual abode, the earth's feelings of separation were therefore more acute. Text 36. While the earth and the personality of religion were thus engaged in conversation, the saintly King Parikshit reached the shore of the Sarasvati river, which flowed towards the east. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto 16th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled, How Parikshit Received the Age of Kali. Chapter 17, Punishment and Reward of Kali. Text 1. Suta Goswami said, after reaching that place, Maharaja Parikshit observed that a lower-caste Sudra, dressed like a king, was beating a cow and a bull with a club, as if they had no owner. Purport. The principal sign of the age of Kali is that lowercase Sudras, i.e. men without Brahminical culture and spiritual initiation, will be dressed like administrators or kings, and the principal business of such non-Kshatriya rulers will be to kill the innocent animals, especially the cows and the bulls, who shall be unprotected by their masters. The bona fide Vaishyas, the mercantile community. In the Bhagavad Gita 1844, it is said that the Vaisyas are meant to deal in agriculture, cow protection, and trade. In the age of Kali, the degraded Vaishyas, the mercantile men, are engaged in supplying cows to slaughterhouses. The Kshatriyas are meant to protect the citizens of the state, whereas the Vaishyas are meant to protect the cows and bulls and utilize them to produce grains and milk. The cow is meant to deliver milk, and the bull is meant to produce grains. But in the age of Kali, the Sudra class of men are in the post of administrators, and the cows and bulls, or the mothers and the fathers, unprotected by the Vaishyas, are subjected to the slaughterhouses organized by the Sudra administrators. Text 2. The bull was as white as a white lotus flower. He was terrified of the Sudra who was beating him, and he was so afraid that he was standing on one leg, trembling and urinating. Purport. The next symptom of the age of Kali is that principles of religion, which are all spotlessly white, like the white lotus flower, will be attacked by the uncultured Sudra population of the age. They may be descendants of Brahmana or Kshatriya forefathers, but in the age of Kali, for want of sufficient education and culture of Vedic wisdom, such a Sudra-like population will defy the principles of religion, and persons who are religiously endowed will be terrified by such men. They will declare themselves as adherents of no religious principles, and many isms and cults will spring up in Kali Yuga only to kill the spotless bull of religion. The state will be declared to be secular or without any particular principle of religion, and as a result there will be total indifference to the principles of religion. The citizens will be free to act as they like, without respect for sadhu, shastra, and guru. The bull standing on one leg indicates that the principles of religion are gradually diminishing. Even the fragmental existence of religious principles will be embarrassed by so many obstacles, as if in the trembling condition of falling down at any time. Text 3. Although the cow is beneficial because one can draw religious principles from her, she was now rendered poor and calfless. Her legs were being beaten by a Sudra. There were tears in her eyes, and she was distressed and weak. She was hankering after some grass in the field. Purport. The next symptom of the age of Kali is the distressed condition of the cow. Milking the cow means drawing the principles of religion in a liquid form. The great rishis and munis would live only on milk. Srila Sukadeva Goswami would go to a householder while he was milking a cow, and he would simply take a little quantity of it for subsistence. Even 50 years ago, no one would deprive a sadhu of a quart or two of milk, and every householder would give milk like water. For a Sanatanist, a follower of Vedic principles, it is the duty of every householder to have cows and bulls as household paraphernalia, and not only for drinking milk, but also for deriving religious principles. The Sanatanist worships cows on religious principles and respects Brahmanas. The cow's milk is required for the sacrificial fire, and by performing sacrifices the householder can be happy. The cow's calf not only is beautiful to look at, but also gives satisfaction to the cow, and so she delivers as much milk as possible. But in the Kali Yuga, the calves are separated from the cows as early as possible, for purposes which may not be mentioned in these pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. The cow stands with tears in her eyes. The Sudra milkman draws milk from the cow artificially, and when there is no milk, the cow is sent to be slaughtered. These greatly sinful acts are responsible for all the troubles in present society. People do not know what they are doing in the name of economic development. The influence of Kali will keep them in the darkness of ignorance. Despite all endeavors for peace and prosperity, they must try to see the cows and the bulls happy in all respects. Foolish people do not know how one earns happiness by making the cows and bulls happy, but it is a fact by the law of nature. Let us take it from the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam and adopt the principles for the total happiness of humanity. Text 4. Maharaja Parikshit, well equipped with arrows and bow, and seated on a gold-embossed chariot, spoke to him, the Sudra, with a deep voice sounding like thunder. Purport: an administrative head or king like Maharaja Parikshit, with full majestic authority, well equipped with weapons to chastise miscreants, can challenge the agents of the age of Kali. Then only will it be possible to counteract the degraded age. And in the absence of such strong executive heads, there is always disruption of tranquility. The elected show-bottle executive head, as representative of a degraded public, cannot be equal with a strong king like Maharaja Parikshit. The dress or style of royal order does not count. It is one's actions which are counted. Text 5. Oh, who are you? You appear to be strong, and yet you dare kill within my protection those who are helpless. By your dress you pose yourself to be a godly man, king, but by your deeds you are opposing the principles of the twice-born Kshatriyas. Purport: the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas are called twice-born, because for these higher classes of men there is one birth by parental conjugation, and there is another birth of cultural rejuvenation by spiritual initiation from the bona fide acharya, or spiritual master. So a Kshatriya is also twice-born like a Brahmana, and his duty is to give protection to the helpless. The Kshatriya king is considered to be the representative of God, to give protection to the helpless and chastise the miscreants. Whenever there are anomalies in this routine work by the administrators, there is an incarnation of the Lord to re-establish the principles of a godly kingdom. In the age of Kali, the poor helpless animals, especially the cows, which are meant to receive all sorts of protection from the administrative heads, are killed without restriction. Thus the administrative heads under whose noses such things happen are representatives of God in name only. Such powerful administrators are rulers of the poor citizens by dress or office, but factually they are worthless, lower-class men without the cultural assets of the twice-born. No one can expect justice or equality of treatment for once-born, spiritually uncultured, lower-class men. Therefore, in the age of Kali, everyone is unhappy due to the maladministration of the state. The modern human society is not twice born by spiritual culture. Therefore, the people's government by the people who are not twice born must be a government of Kali in which everyone is unhappy. Text 6. You, rogue, do you dare beat an innocent cow because Lord Krishna and Arjuna, the carrier of the Gandiva bow, are out of sight? Since you are beating the innocent in a secluded place, you are considered a culprit, and therefore deserve to be killed. Purport: in a civilization where God is conspicuously banished, and there is no devotee warrior like Arjuna, the associates of the age of Kali take advantage of this lawless kingdom and arrange to kill innocent animals like the cow in secluded slaughterhouses. Such murderers of animals stand to be condemned to death by the order of a pious king, like Maharaja Parikshit. For a pious king, the culprit who kills an animal in a secluded place is punishable by the death penalty, exactly like a murderer who kills an innocent child in a secluded place. Text 7. Then he, Maharaja Parikshit, asked the bull, "Oh, who are you? Are you a bull as white as a white lotus, or are you a demigod? You have lost 3 of your legs and are moving on only 1. Are you some demigod causing us grief in the form of a bull?" Purport: at least up to the time of Maharaja Parikshit, no one could imagine the wretched conditions of the cow and the bull. Maharaja Parikshit, therefore, was astonished to see such a horrible scene. He inquired whether the bull was not a demigod, assuming such a wretched condition to indicate the future of the cow and the bull. Text 8. Now for the first time in a kingdom well protected by the arms of the kings of the Kuru dynasty, I see you grieving with tears in your eyes. Up till now, no one on earth has ever shed tears because of royal negligence. Purport: the protection of the lives of both the human beings and the animals is the first and foremost duty of a government. A government must not discriminate in such principles. It is simply horrible for a pure-hearted soul to see organized animal killing by the state in this age of Kali. Maharaja Parikshit was lamenting for the tears in the eyes of the bull, and he was astonished to see such an unprecedented thing in his good kingdom. Men and animals were equally protected as far as life was concerned. That is the way in God's kingdom. Text 9. O son of Surabi, you need lament no longer now. There is no need to fear this low-class Sudra. And, O mother cow, as long as I am living as the ruler and subduer of all envious men, there is no cause for you to cry. Everything will be good for you. Purport. Protection of bulls and cows and all other animals can be possible only when there is a state ruled by an executive head, like Maharaja Parikshit. Maharaja Parikshit addresses the cow as mother, for he is a cultured twice-born Kshatriya king. Surabi is the name of the cows which exist in the spiritual planets and are especially reared by Lord Sri Krishna himself. As men are made after the form and features of the Supreme Lord, so also the cows are made after the form and features of the Surabi cows in the spiritual kingdom. In the material world, the human society gives all protection to the human being, but there is no law to protect the descendants of Surabi, who can give all protection to men by supplying the miracle food, milk. But Maharaja Parikshit and the Pandavas were fully conscious of the importance of the cow and bull, and they were prepared to punish the cow killer with all chastisement, including death. There has sometimes been agitation for the protection of the cow, but for want of pious executive heads and suitable laws, the cow and the bull are not given protection. The human society should recognize the importance of the cow and the bull, and thus give all protection to these important animals, following in the footsteps of Maharaja Parikshit. For protecting the cows in Brahminical culture, the Lord, who is very kind to the cow and the Brahmanas, Go Brahmana Hitaya, will be pleased with us and will bestow upon us real peace. Texts 10 through 11. O chaste one, the king's good name, duration of life and good rebirth, vanish when all kinds of living beings are terrified by miscreants in his kingdom. It is certainly the prime duty of the king to subdue first the sufferings of those who suffer. Therefore I must kill this most wretched man, because he is violent against other living beings. Purport. When there is some disturbance caused by wild animals in a village or town, the police or others take action to kill them. Similarly, it is the duty of the government to kill at once all bad social elements, such as thieves, dacoits, and murderers. The same punishment is also due to animal killers, because the animals of the state are also the praja. Praja means one who has taken birth in the state, and this includes both men and animals. Any living being who takes birth in a state has the primary right to live under the protection of the king. The jungle animals are also subject to the king, and they also have a right to live. So what to speak of domestic animals like the cows and bulls? Any living being, if he terrifies other living beings, is a most wretched subject, and the king should at once kill such a disturbing element. As the wild animal is killed when it creates disturbances, similarly any man who unnecessarily kills or terrifies the jungle animals or other animals must be punished at once. By the law of the Supreme Lord, all living beings, in whatever shape they may be, are the sons of the Lord, and no one has any right to kill another animal unless it is so ordered by the codes of natural law. The tiger can kill a lower animal for his subsistence, but a man cannot kill an animal for his subsistence. That is the law of God, who has created the law that a living being subsists by eating another living being. Thus the vegetarians are also living by eating other living beings. Therefore the law is that one should live only by eating specific living beings, as ordained by the law of God. The Isopanishad directs that one should live by the direction of the Lord, and not at one's sweet will. A man can subsist on varieties of grains, fruits, and milk ordained by God, and there is no need of animal food save and except in particular cases. The illusioned king or executive head, even though sometimes advertised as a great philosopher and learned scholar, will allow slaughterhouses in the state without knowing that torturing poor animals clears the way to hell for such foolish kings or executive heads. The executive head must always be alert to the safety of the prajas, both man and animal, and inquire whether a particular living being is harassed at any place by another living being. The harassing living being must at once be caught and put to death, as shown by Maharaja Parikshit. The people's government, or government by the people, should not allow killing of innocent animals by the sweet will of foolish government men. They must know the codes of God as mentioned in the revealed scriptures. Maharaja Parikshit quotes here that according to the codes of God, the irresponsible king or state executive jeopardizes his good name, duration of life, power and strength, and ultimately his progressive march towards a better life and salvation after death. Such foolish men do not even believe in the existence of a next life. While commenting on this particular verse, we have in our presence the statement of a great modern politician